We're here at the Worldview Weekend Conference in the Ozarks, and we're with the man himself, Brannon Howse, who put it all together. Brannon, thanks very much for being with us.
No, thank you for being here and two great keynote presentations. I mean, I can't wait to pull these clips and put them in our documentary on globalism. I mean, you hit a home run with your talks.
Well, I appreciate it, and you as well. It's been a wonderful conference, and everybody I've talked to thinks the same. Brannon, one of the things that you really specialize in, I think this is where you add so much value with your ministry, is calling out pastors who are selling out not just the Bible and you know, the gospel, but also even just basic American things like our freedom and our Constitution. Why do you think they're doing that, and who are some of the worst offenders?
Well, it's hard to know why they do it because it doesn't seem to make any sense whatsoever. You know, I dealt with in my book Marxianity with guys that are so popular today, like David Platt, Matt Chandler, John Piper. Those guys are promoting white privilege. You know, and a lot of people weren't paying attention to when they were promoting white privilege. They were kind of ahead of the curve, if you go back and check. And they made it into my documentary, Sabotage, which came out in 2018. You know, now all the rage is white privilege, right? But these guys have been into social justice with the Gospel Coalition, Together for the Gospel. So Chandler, David Platt, very popular, even if your listeners don't know who they are. These are big influencers inside mainstream evangelicalism. John Piper, he's one of these neo-Calvinists as well, running around telling people that Christians should not own guns.
Really?
Oh yeah, we have that on video. We have that on video in our documentary Sabotage, where, you know, he says, if someone breaks into your home, what are you going to do? You don't want to shoot them; they might die and go to hell. So what are you going to do? You're going to shoot them in the leg, hit them over the head with it. What are you going to do? And he said the best way not to have to make that decision is don't have a gun in the home.
Wow.
Now, if you want to go deer hunt or whatever, that's fine. You know, he says, but Christians shouldn't own guns. And then we talk about these mainline liberal guys that are running a Second Amendment, anti-Second Amendment campaign. So you've got it coming inside so-called evangelicalism from the left and the right. So this is very troubling. And then you have guys like John MacArthur that continually show up at Together for the Gospel for years, year in, year out, with David Platt, Matt Chandler, John Piper. Guys he should never be taking the platform with and giving credibility to. I mean, particularly for a guy that does a conference called Strange Fire, wanting to go after clear-minded charismatics, but he's going to run and share the platform with social justice people. You know, I know a lot of very gospel-based clear-minded charismatics. I'm not worried about them taking over our churches with socialism or communism or these, you know, but he's going to run and share the platform with guys that are openly promoting social justice, white privilege, Agenda 21. And then, of course, he wrote a book, you know, like 2000, Why Government Can't Save You, where he said America's founding fathers sinned and violated New Testament principles when they founded America. And he talked about Christians that try to appeal to their constitutional rights. You know, you have all these so-called constitutional rights, God-given rights that are part of a biblical worldview. And he refers to such Christians in some phrase like rebel-rousing malcontents. And when you read that book, Why Government Can't Save You, written I think around 2000, and then you realize in 2020, he's now sued in court to keep his church open, and he goes on Fox News, and I have the video, appealing to his constitutional rights. Well, wait a minute. 20 years ago, he's writing a book bemoaning anyone that does that as a Christian and Christian activism, right? Well, you say, well, Brannon, he's changed his mind. Have you never changed yours? Yeah. But where is he saying, I've changed my mind? I shouldn't have written that book. I understand what it is that Christians were back 20 years ago trying to defend and stop from happening, that he's now suffering the consequences of in 2020. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But he hasn't done that. So isn't it interesting? He spent a long time indoctrinating, or should I say brainwashing, a lot of pastors to believe his perverted view of Romans 13. All governments are ordained by God. No, they're not. Romans 13 is not a blanket endorsement of every government. It's a template. But now he wants to come around in 2020 when his ox is in the ditch and now appeal to his constitutional rights. Well, 20 years ago, he wrote a book and has indoctrinated thousands of pastors who've indoctrinated their congregations of this corrupted view of John Calvin of Romans 13, which if you go historically and study it, that corrupted view of Romans 13 is why the Reformed, Calvinist, Lutheran churches of Germany didn't stand up to Hitler. They had that same John Calvin corrupted view of Romans 13. Our spiritual duty is to God, our political duty is to the state, never shall the two meet. But Romans 13 is not an endorsement of every government. It is a template. Reward the righteous, punish the wicked. The magistrate is to be a minister of God for righteousness. Well, as soon as they're not doing that, they've given up the public trust. And you don't have to obey them, particularly under our Constitution. And that's what's so interesting. Because under our constitutional republic, William Blackstone was asked, what is a constitutional republic? He said, what the divine has ruled on, we don't rule against. So for us, it's not, you know, either or. a Romans 13 template or constitution. Isn't that interesting? We have a constitutional republic that says whatever the divine's ruled on, we don't rule against as a constitutional republic. In fact, it even says what in our organic documents that you not only have the right but the obligation to do away with any government that gets outside of these confines and reestablish a government accordingly to these guidelines. So we in America have it very simple from a biblical position and a constitutional position because those actually are married to each other. But it seems as though many pastors don't understand that. And this false understanding of Romans 13 is what led the church in Germany to be completely impotent and roll over and literally dissolve their denominations and unite under the Reich bishop handpicked by Adolf Hitler. And they picked a man named Mueller to lead the Reich Church.
So what should pastors in America, some of the ones you talked about are very well known. I'm sure some of the people watching are like, wait, I like that guy. I didn't know he said that. So what should pastors in America be doing in this time? And do you think some of these pastors that you talked about, should they publicly apologize? Tell us what you think pastors ought to be doing right now.
Well, I mean, like John MacArthur could easily come out and say, hey, I wrote that book, Why Government Can't Save You, and I said the Founding Fathers sinned, violated New Testament principles, and I talked about Christians not always appealing to their constitutional God-given rights and all this Christian activism they're involved in. And I maybe should update my thinking on that after seeing how they've shut down my church in California. And so if he would do that, most people would say, good on him, good for you. We all change our position. We all come to new conclusions sometime on issues. But he hasn't done that. So yeah, he definitely should do that. I think he owes a lot of patriot Christians an apology, to be honest with you, because he's doing the very things he once bemoaned in that book. Guys like David Platt, Matt Chandler, Tim Keller, these guys are, I don't think, ever going to see the light of day. I don't think they're ever going to apologize. They are that train has left the station. And so now we're at a point where we're now talking globalism, and many of these people are hooking their wagon, as I deal with in my book Marxianity, to known globalist organizations and George Soros-aligned organizations and organizations wanting to do with borders, do away with them, and pushing the whole illegal immigration thing, as this is, some call of Jesus that we do this, even though God's the one who draws the borders of nations, right? So for some of these guys, the train has left the station. And I would ask some of the good guys like John MacArthur, why do you, for year in and year out, keep sharing the platform with these guys? Why won't you call them out by name, denounce them, and never share the platform with them again?
Yeah.
But I saw John MacArthur with Tim Keller just last year at a conference. I mean, how many years I've been talking about Tim Keller? So I don't have a staff like he does. If I can figure it out, why can't he and his staff?
Yeah. And how about your average Christian out there who might be in a church where the pastor is maybe not speaking out on the important issues of the day? What should the church be doing?
Well, obviously they need to teach a comprehensive biblical worldview in the area of law, science, economics, history, family, social issues, education, and religion. Yeah. So I would say have a comprehensive worldview. But today a lot of pastors don't even know that. They couldn't even name what are the 6 dominant worldviews in America. Biblical Christianity, cosmic humanism or New Age, secular humanism, Islam, postmodernism. They can't name these various worldviews, 6 dominant worldviews that are ruling America. And so until you understand these 6 dominant worldviews, not that that's the only 6, but until you understand these 6 dominant worldviews, you're going to have a hard time saying to your congregation, now here's how you think and here's how you contend for the faith against this worldview. Because what did Paul do on Mars Hill? He talked to the Stoic or the New Ager, right? He appealed to the different groups, and he got 3 responses. Some said, we don't want to hear more of this. Others said, hey, we want to hear more at a later date. And others believed and were converted. But he knew what they believed, and he knew what their worldview was, and he appealed to it, even pointed out their idol to their unknown God, right? So I think it's important that we know what the dominant worldviews are of the day, what they believe, and then from a Christian worldview, how do we refute it? Because, what I find is a lot of my friends that are former atheists that are now strong Christians, it's because there was a Christian who knew what they believed, why they believed it, and would debate them. And they really liked the debate. And that debating was what caused them to consider the things that led them to finally become Christians. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. But what they, as atheists, say is that the Christians, a lot of them were intellectually lazy, not very bright. They didn't know what they believed. They didn't know why they believed it. And as atheists, they could chew them up and spit them out. So when they finally came up to Christians that knew what they believed, why they believed it, and defended it in the area of law, science, economics, history, family, social issues, education, religion, that was very compelling. And I think that's what more Christians need to do today, is give a reason for the hope they profess. They see the world in bits and pieces, but they don't understand the big picture. Yeah. And until you understand the big picture, you won't understand what's happening, why it's happening, much less how we should respond.
Yeah, yeah. Imagine that, the Bible applying in all areas of life, huh? And the pastors, the clergy in America, really played a huge role in freeing America from the tyranny of King George. Do you think that can happen again, or is the church in America too far gone, and it's the institutional church at least, and just give it up?
I think the institutional church in America is gone. Absolutely. I said that here during one of the private luncheons. I said I think the evangelical church as we know it is gone. I think now we're talking about family churches, home churches, very, very small congregations. But if you're talking about the National Association of Evangelicals, they're not going to step up to the plate and help. They're now pushing all the things that the mainline churches are promoting. And that's very interesting. Most people don't know the history that the National Association of Evangelicals was started to counter the liberalism of the mainline modernist churches, right? That believed we could solve the world's problems through human reasoning. Now we're confronting a postmodern world that says truth and reality are created by man, and we can solve the problems by tapping into our spiritual oneness with God and pantheism and panentheism. All is God and God is all. So how can you have the National Association of Evangelicals that was started to counter the mainline churches, now they're in lockstep with the mainline churches. They work together. So we can go down the line. Southern Baptist Convention, they passed Resolution 9 affirming critical race theory, cultural Marxism a couple years ago, 2 years ago, year and a half ago. Every time we turn around, these main big, the Presbyterian churches of America, that was started by my friend, the late Dr. D. James Kennedy. That church has gone to the left, that denomination. So I think institutionally, I don't see any way mainstream evangelicalism saves America. I think it will be individual patriots, individual Christians, and that even means some people who consider themselves patriots but aren't really what we would even call evangelicals. So we're in a really odd time now where you would think you could count on the Christians to defend America and defend Christians and Jews and liberty. You may find yourself, it's not the Christians coming to your aid. You may find it's the so-called Christians that are turning you in because they have now bought into a false Christianity. And then that's what Vance Havner, the late preacher, said years ago. The devil's not fighting religion. He's producing a counterfeit Christianity so much like the real thing that good Christians are afraid to speak out against it for fear they're fighting against God. And so when they look at guys like you and me and others that are here speaking, they think that what we're doing is unloving. We're not promoting unity and tolerance. We're too harsh. We're too judgmental. They see us in their brand of Christianity as being the problem. And that's what went on in Germany. That Christian Reich church turned against the confessing church, Niemöller, Bonhoeffer, and others. They were trying to stand up and say, we can't do this. Well, they were the minority. And we know that most of them died or were like, Bonhoeffer was hung by a piano wire till dead, and Niemöller was sent off to a concentration camp. Thankfully, he survived. And I may not have agreed with all of them on every theological point at all, but at least they understood what was the proper Christian worldview when it came to understanding the anti-Semitism and the slaughter of the Jews by Hitler or the Nazi state.
So, Brannon, what's the best place to find your material, your information, your TV programs, your radio program? You do all kinds of stuff. What's the best place to find it all?
And we have one coming out with you here in the next week or so, wvwtv.com. Go to wvwtv.com to find it. We also started, by the way, in June, worldviewreport.com, which is the conservative worldview alternative to Drudge, who seems to have gone into the ditch. So if they go to worldviewreport.com, we link a couple times a week to an article from New American. I go to the New American website every day, and when I see a new article, I put it at worldviewreport.com.
Excellent. Worldviewreport.com, folks. You heard it here. This is Brannon Howse, the one who created this conference here. Obviously very knowledgeable about what's going on in the church. Thanks for watching.